All right, I'd like to welcome everybody to another episode of Behind the Sweet Science, a boxing podcast. And today we have a very special guest,
Wow.
an interview with legendary gentleman Gerry Cooney.
Hey, nice to be you guys. You got the same nose as me. How'd you get that nose?
Well, I'm Italian and Irish, so and I've been in the boxing
Oh,
ring a couple of times, so
all right.
I've been smashed around a little bit. So I
I
wanted
had
to.
you listen. I have what you call the Roman nose. It roamed all around from time to time.
Yeah, I heard that before. So I wanted to get started in the amateur game for you. I know your father put you into the sport of boxing at a very early age. I know your older brother was a boxer, I believe, and you got into it. How was it being in Long Island in the early '70s, growing up in the boxing game? Was there much of a amateur boxing scene in Long Island
Well,
back in the
back
'70s?
then, my brother left the house when he was 15. Obviously, he had a. My father was a madman, and he left the house on his own since he was 15. And he wound up going to a gym. I loved him. So I wanted to go to that gym. I went to the gym and started boxing. I was 6'4", 160 pounds. You
Wow.
had to wet me down to see me.
Right.
And they had a big family there, the Capianco family, who ran the gym. And, you know, I went there with my brother. I was 15 and a half. He was 19. And he was a very big puncher. And I watched him in a bar one night and get into an argument with some guy. And the guy was like 6'9". My brother hit him with right hand to the body and left hook on the chin, knocked him out. Cold and knocked the wind out of him. It was like scary for me, right? But I learned something there, that, what I needed to do. And so I decided to go to the gym to meet with him and we boxed together. And it was a great experience. Only thing was that then later on, after my brother left, I stayed and it was very tumultuous with the Capabianco and the kids. So I started to get develop and get better. And when they would box me, I used to not hit him because I afraid the old man would get mad at me. And then the other coach, Otto Juvenelli, who was a great guy, said, "Hey, don't listen to that. You go out there and fight those guys." And I started to, and then the old man got mad at me and picked me up against the wall. And I left the gym, went to Queens. My father used to make me go to Queens. And then I, won the middleweight championship with the Capiancos. I had 7 fights, 5 knockouts. You couldn't see me, but if I hit you, you were going to go to sleep. And uh, and it fed me because after every fight, I would go to the newspaper stand where the Daily News was, and it seemed like almost every fight I was on the back page of the Daily News. Now I had no sense of self back in those days, but those pictures I used to take them to school and say, "Look, here's me," and it gave me a sense of self. And I was angry for where I grew up, and so boxing fed me. So when the bell rang, I was scared to death, but I always tell the story that in my career, there'd be a knock on the door, and they'd open up a door and say, "Cooney, you're next," and the first thing you would say, "Oh shit!" And then you'd be walked down this empty hallway, and you'd be thinking your life would be passing through you, and then when you opened the door and you heard the roar of the crowd, you just kind of put it all together. And it was you get in that ring, and you couldn't wait for the bell to ring, and I had 7 fights and 5 knockouts. I won the gloves twice. I was a finalist 3 times. I was on the United States team, and I went to Europe and came back. And I mean, I could tell you my story, but I want you to ask me.
Well, don't worry. I know all the history. That was what I was going to get into next. Well, first I wanted to ask, at what age did you know? Obviously, you started training at 15, and what age did you know you could start competing with some of the kids that were in the amateur boxing scene in
I
New
mean,
York?
I was like a young, immature kid. I didn't have any self confidence. I didn't get any self confidence, which a lot of kids from that era didn't get because their fathers came from a bad place, right? And so I didn't have a lot of belief in myself, but I knew that when the bell rang, I was going to fight and I was going to hit you. And as it turned out, my brother and I both made it to the finals. And I prayed that day in the finals, if one of us has to lose, let it be me. Because I love my brother that much that I wanted him to win. And unfortunately, he lost that night, and we lost him. He disappeared for years, and I stayed with it. And made it to the finals of the light heavyweight division. Beat Eddie Davis, lost to his younger brother Johnny, and then I went to the finals of the heavyweights and won the heavyweight title.
Right. And that was in '76. So
Yes.
you went from 160 in 1973, and then in '76 you won the heavyweight. What was your weight in the 1976 New York Golden Gloves?
Well, I mean, I was 100, 203 pounds or something like that. I was very light, but I was always a puncher. I didn't, if athletes are gifted with certain abilities that normal people don't get. You can make the moment happen, like the baseball or football. You can make that turn just in time. And boxing's the same way, that you can make it happen. And that was a gift from God for me. And every time I went in that ring, I was scary,
Right.
but I was going to fight you, and fortunately, I was good at it, and so it made me grow a little bit and become more confident in myself. And I was always the guy that beat up the bully. You know what I mean? Like in school,
Right.
I grew up terrible, hiding out of my house. But when I went to school, I didn't like the bullies at all, and I used to straighten them out. And then, as I grew up, I fought in the heavyweight division. I had a great knockout. Remember this guy, his name was Earl's Tripp. And in the finals, on the back page of the Daily News, it said, he was laying on the floor. It said, a trip to the canvas. And man, I'll tell you, I'm a kid. I was a kid. I didn't believe anything. And all of a sudden, people were looking at me and talking to me. And, went to the first time on a plane ever. I went to Europe on the United States team. And I was one of the guys who had 4 fights, 4 wins, and 4 knockouts.
And you won international tournaments in England and Scotland
Wales.
and Wales. What
Yeah.
was that like fighting overseas? Was the competition stiffer than in New York?
I got to tell you, I fought this one guy. I think his name was Terry Chard. And I hit him with the best left hook I ever threw. I could feel it. My toe went to my knee, my hip, and my shoulder. And he just looked at me, that son of a bitch. He just looked at me. And so I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? I came back after the first round and I went to the body.
Right.
And I worked his body and knocked him out. And then I came home, and obviously there's another difficult experience for me to talk about, but it's true. And I got a phone call from the president of the Olympic Committee who said, listen, I made it. There was a Russian team, all heavyweights, coming to the Garden. Would you like to fight on that card? I said, sure, I would love to fight on that card. So, but it was summertime, and I was drinking with my friends and not taking care of myself. And 6 days before the fight, they told me and said, listen, I'm fighting the 4th ranked heavyweight champ there, right? So I ran for 6 days. I was drinking Perrier and having Brussels sprouts, eating vitamins.
Right.
And I get to the Garden. This guy was 6 feet wide by 6 feet tall. And of course, I'm thinking, this guy's going to kill me tonight, right? But I hit him with a left hook on the chin. I knocked him out.
Wow.
And everybody from Long Island was there because, it was just all, Huntington people in Madison Square Garden in the big arena. And I knocked him out in 1 round. And I got a phone call the next day from the president of the Olympic Committee. He tells me, listen, Gerry, you made it to the finals of the trials. And that's where the top 8 guys goes to Colorado Springs and fights it out. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't make it. And he said to me, what? This is the finals of the Olympic trials. I said, my father's sick. I hated my father. I didn't believe in myself. I didn't have anybody in my corner. I know it's hard for you to understand that, but I didn't believe. I'm not going to go there make an ass of myself. I didn't take the biggest moment of my life. And when people grow up in this kind of a background and a history and a family story, they seem to self-sabotage themselves, right? And that's what I find out, in life, and that we don't know how to pick the right people because we never learned. All the people we picked, we couldn't trust.
Right.
So it took me years to figure that stuff out, and I'm grateful I did.
Right. And then after all the amateurs, do you regret not fighting in that 1976
Of
Olympic
course, I
trials?
mean, looking back on it, hey, maybe I couldn't have won, but I could have had this greatest experience and grown.
Right.
That's the ability to grow and to mature and to be more confident about who you are. And I didn't get that experience. And I guess, there's a lot of ways of looking at it, you know. So I didn't go. And then you want to believe a story I'm going to tell you? So I'm 18 years old, 19 years old, whatever it is. And I have this friend of mine who's a bartender. He's the only guy I trust a little bit. And he goes around with me to these meetings about this company wants 75%, 50%. This company wants this company wants that. And my friend, all he was worried about me getting me was health insurance. I mean, come on, health insurance. So I meet Rappaport and Jones.
Right. The
Now
managers.
they both passed. I pray for them all the time, but they weren't the greatest of guys in my opinion. And but they had Howard Davis,
Right.
and Howard Davis signed for $2.5 million contract with CBS. So I figured this would be great for me to get showcased, you know, on his shows.
Right.
So I took the deal, and little did I know I signed a 16-year contract. Can you believe that?
Wow. They don't have
That's
those no
how
more.
that's how alone I was. Do you understand? And they also made a promotional company with Sam Glass, their real estate partner, to co-promote the fight with Holmes.
Right.
So they got half of what King got. So
Wow.
all this stuff we learn, you know, after the fact, right?
Right.
And here I am, a guy I'm looking for people to trust. And meanwhile, all of them they're caring about is making the big fight with Holmes. And so, have some good fights.
Right. Yeah. Let's get into that. First, I want to talk about your longtime trainer and how did you get to
Oh,
know about Victor Valley and what was the experience like training with Victor?
Victor was a great story I'm going to tell you about is that, I get called to meet with Customato
Right.
in the city at some commercial, some big highfalutin place. So my train is broke down. I get there an hour and a half late, 2 hours late. He says, "You come here late to meet me?" Right there, I was finished with him. I said, "No, my train broke down. I couldn't get here," and I knew I didn't want nothing to do with him. Right. So, but I sit and listen, and I leave, and then they bring me Victor Valley, who was one of the greatest men I ever meet. I still love that guy to this day. I mean, he was a hot, fiery, tempered Puerto Rican.
Right.
Now, my grandfather was from Spain, so I knew about, you know, fiery. And so, he was in my corner. We boxed every day. We learned. He was a great teacher of boxing. He taught me how to protect myself. And I just think that what happened to me from my upbringing and background, life was so crazy that I couldn't ingest everything he was giving me. So he was giving me a lot of great stuff, but I couldn't ingest it. And I couldn't really make it a part of me till after my career was over. And today I understand completely everything he was trying to give me. And that being said, he gave me a lot of stuff too. And he cared about me.
Right.
And he was hot tempered and angry guy sometimes, but basically I loved the guy with all my heart.
Right.
And so go ahead. I'm sorry, you go on.
So I want to talk about what a lot of the commentators were calling your first big step up fight, and a guy that was I think he was talking a little smack in the press conference. I don't know if you remember, but the commentators when I watched the fight, they were saying there was some bad blood in the press conference, and that's a fighter named John Dino Dennis, who was best known
Oh
for
yeah.
beating. He was best known for beating Scott Ledoux, and he was a very credible opponent. He was only stopped, I think, maybe once or twice. So maybe I think it was just Foreman that stopped him
Yeah.
before the fight that you had with John Dino Dennis. So let's talk about the fight with John Dino Dennis. It was in Madison Square Garden too, I believe.
Oh, it was
And
great, man. It was great, bro. I tell you what, man. The worst thing he did to me was put his hand on my cheek and push my head away. I don't know how I knew it, but that night I knew. I came back after the first round. My trainer said, "Why didn't you knock him out?" I said, "Cause I got plenty of time."
right,
And he was a tough guy, and he he let himself. I was much more skilled than him and much bigger puncher.
right,
And so he had that crazy uh, manager. I forget his name, but he was an arrogant, nasty guy, talking all kinds of smack to me, trying to get to me. Right, and all I'm thinking was, I can't wait to get my hands on this guy. Right,
Right.
and what was his name? That manager trainer. Anyway, well, you'll add it into the piece. But anyway, I knocked him out. And I remember watching him laying flat on the ring and the cameras on him. And all he did was lift up his head and it was all bloody.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah. You landed a beautiful left hook. So if
yeah,
anybody's out there wants to watch that, I mean, just a magnificent left hook you landed that flattened him